Guys, Gunnar and we've got a really cool 80s metal riff for you to learn today. This particular riff, though, is going to have you playing what are called power chord inversions. So I'll explain what those are as we go through the lesson, but first, let me get Gunnar. He came up with this really cool riff. I think he's downstairs. Hey, Gunnar.
Yeah, bro.
Can you come upstairs and play that really cool metal riff with those power chord inversions that you played for me earlier?
Hey, give me a couple minutes. I'm making some coffee.
Actually, if you don't mind, could you make me a cup of coffee as well while you're down there?
Yeah, okay. I'll make you some. I got a little surprise for him today.
All right, wait till you hear this riff that Gunnar came up with. It's pretty cool. Oh, dude, what did you do to my coffee? All right, guys, let's let me put this to the side. I'll have to, we'll deal with that later. Anyway, let's break down this riff. What I'm gonna have us do is I'm gonna have Gunnar play through the riff here, and I'm gonna explain this. I'm gonna break it down for you. Now, hang around till the end of this lesson. I've got something kind of different and special that I usually don't cover on my channel here, but I want to show you how powerful these types of riffs can be for a specific instrument. So I'm gonna have Gunnar just play through the riff real quick out in the open here with the no backing tracks. By the way, for my Patreon supporters, you guys have the tabs and the backing tracks for this lesson that we're about to go through. It's out there right now, so make sure you download that. If you'd like to be a Patreon supporter, there is a link in the description of this video. All right, so you can hear a little bit different texture and some character coming out of this riff as opposed to playing regular power chords. Now, before we get into the actual notes that we're playing, let me explain what power chord inversions are. They're basically starting the power chord without the root note. And in this case, that would be starting with the fifth note, okay? That's the next note that you would naturally play in the power chord. You're starting to play that power chord with that fifth note, then you'll play the higher octave of the root note. So let me start out by having Gunnar play just a regular A power chord here. All right, so here's what the power chord inversion will sound like for that A. So with the power chord inversion, you don't have that bottom end, okay? You don't have that note. But again, at the end of this video, I've got something really powerful to share with you. And anyway, just hang around for that. That's gonna be cool. So with the inversion though, you've got more of that gritty and just raw rock and roll edgy sound, and it just screams 80s metal. And in the case of power chords with inversions, you're going to be barring those two notes. So for that A, we barred the second fret of the D and the G string there. Now, if you're playing an inversion and it happened to be the open note, the fifth note of the power chord happened to be an open string, of course you'd play that next string open as well. And we'll get to that. That's actually part of this little riff here. So let's break down the riff. Here's the first part I want you to learn. So we're on the fifth fret again of the D and G strings, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna play that note, okay, then we're gonna slide up to the seventh fret there. Now, one of the cool things about these power chords with inversions is because the way you're playing them, you know, you're barring those two notes, you can get a little vibrato out of those. So let you hear Gunnar play that. So that's just kind of a side note, no pun intended. Well, the pun's always intended. Anyway, so that's just kind of one of those cool things that you can do with these power chords with inversions. So next, we go there, right? But then we're gonna go right back, okay? So we're going 5s to 7s, those frets there, and then we're gonna go back to the 5th fret. So check this out. So again, all we're doing is we're playing, and I like to throw extras in there, like we're doing a slide in this case. I like to throw these little extra things in there when I'm showing you a new technique. When I know this might not be new to some of you, but when I'm showing you a technique that maybe we haven't covered or it's not that common, I like to integrate some other techniques in there as well. So we've got the power chords with inversions here, and we're incorporating a slide in there as well. Both ways, by the way. So you're going from 5 to 7s, or 5s to 7s rather, and then 7s back to the 5th frets. Now, once we're back to the 5s, the 5th frets there, we'll just call them the 5s, right? So once we're back to the 5th frets of the D and the G string there, I'm going to do something kind of cool. I'm going to make this into a little riff to where we almost go to what's going to be perceived as a power chord when you see it, but it's actually still part of that C chord there. We're just adding an extra note. We're going to do this little riff though before we go to the A power chord inversion, which this is cool. Check this out. So as you can see, Gunnar was on the 5th frets there, okay? On the 5th frets, 5-5 on the D and G strings. So we go 5-5 to 5-7. Now again, we're not actually playing a different power chord. We're still in the C. Now that, of course, is a power chord on its own, but as we're playing through this progression that we're playing here, we're still playing a C, okay? That next note that we add in there is just part of that C power chord, part of the riff. The C is the foundation of, if that makes sense. So we do that little riff, and then we go right into that A power chord inversion, which is the 2nd frets, and we went over this earlier when we were talking about inversions. When we were explaining the power chord inversion, we go to the 2nd frets of the D and the G string. And then we chop it up a little bit and kind of do the same thing that we just did with the power chord inversion based on the C. Now the cool thing that we end with here, and this is really cool, so we're kind of basing this on an A power chord, right? So we're playing the A power chord inversion, 2nd frets of the D and G strings. We're actually going to go to those open strings, and we're going to play that inversion, which that would just be a G. That's based on a G power chord there. But the G power chord inversion will be those D and G strings open notes. Remember that G string there that's open, that's the final note of this chord that you're playing. Well, that's the higher octave of the root note, which is what? G. So that's how we come up with that. All right, so I'm gonna have Gunnar play through this riff one more time out in the open, and I've got something really cool I wanna share with you after this. And this is something to think about as you're playing these types of chords, throwing in these power chords with inversions. All right, now for the cool extra I want to share with you, and this is really going to be awesome. But first, remember my Patreon supporters, you guys have the tabs and the backing tracks to play along with this lesson here. I always give you guys a backing track with a full mix, and I also give you a backing track with just the drums and the bass, so you can kind of challenge yourself to play along with that, and of course use that backing track to come up with some other stuff that's cool too. So use that. If you'd like to become a Patreon supporter, I do have a link in the description of this video. What I do, guys, real quick, is I give you at least 2 lessons, 2 of my YouTube lessons per month. I give you backing tracks and tabs that you can download, okay? So 1 tier level, just a very simple, inexpensive. So if there's something that you're interested in, again, the link is in the description. While you're in the description, do check out my guitar courses as well. Got some other good stuff in there. So yeah, check that out after this video. cranked up the bass track a little on what you just heard there. And by the way, this is my LTD D5 5-string bass here. It's got the ESP pickups. Pretty cool bass. I've had this thing for a while. Actually, I've got to put some new strings on this because I'm about to record the bass tracks for my new album. That's coming up soon. More on that. You guys have seen some recent videos on the guitar tones and all. But anyway, these power chord inversions, you're missing that bass note, so to speak, right? So think of the A power chord that we went over. Well, that A power chord inversion, we're not playing that open A string, that heavier or lower note, so to speak, right? Playing the power chord inversions on guitar leaves more room for the bass guitar to kind of carry that bottom end. And in metal music or rock music or whatever, you know, you kind of want that. You want that bass guitar to carry that bottom end. Now, this does not mean that you can't ever play regular power chords because, you know, a lot of metal, that's what it consists of. But I will say this, guys, a lot of metal kind of drops the ball, so to speak, when it comes to hearing that bass guitar track. A lot of the bass is just covered up by the heavy guitars. And yeah, we love our heavy guitars and all, but look, if you're like me, I want to hear all the instruments in the song. I don't care if it's metal or rock or country or pop or whatever. You know, I want to hear all the instruments. I want to hear an equal mix, not just heavy guitars without the bass. Now we're all thinking about Metallica's Injustice for All, or Injustice for Jason, right? I heard his rendition of that, by the way. But anyway, this is just an opportunity to kind of let that bass shine through a little bit more. We don't really talk about bass guitar on this channel a whole lot, which I kind of want to talk a little bit more about it and give you guys some more tips for bass. I do have a bass guitar playlist on my channel. If you go to the homepage there of my channel and go to playlist, you'll see the bass. I think I call it bass lessons or bass something. It's got bass in it. But I want to share this real quick with you because when we're writing music, I want you to think about these things. I don't want you to just think about the guitar. Okay, yeah, that's a cool riff, but what about the bass part that's going to support that? Hey, what about the drums even, right? What about the vocals, and if you've got keys in your music or any other instruments in there? I want you to consider that when you're writing guitar riffs. Even metal music, it doesn't have to be just jun, jun, jun all the time, right? I mean, yeah, that's great and all, but you want some dynamics. I talk about dynamics a lot on my channel. I actually talked about dynamics on the acoustic solo live gig tips that I gave in the video I just released right before this one. Hey, if you play solo acoustic gigs or if you want to, which there are reasons why I encourage you to do this, check that video out. There's a lot of great information in that video, the one right before this one. But anyway, I just wanted to throw this out here to you guys. Like I love hearing the bass guitar in rock music and metal music, and I think you should be able to hear it and feel it, and it should be, you know, a prominent part of that, because that's with the drums, that's the foundation of your song. So I just kind of wanted to show you how playing these different types of chords can really allow that bass to come through and just add to the mix there. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please leave me any questions you have in the comments. Don't forget to check out the links in the description of this video, and I will see you on the next one. Until then, keep metal.